Today's readings are definitely about rising from the dead. In the first reading, the Indian in the Old Testament, the teaching was there that all will rise from the graves on the last day. In Jesus' ministry, in his time here on earth, he raised 3 people from the dead. And it seems kind of interesting to me, the circumstances around each one of them. The young girl was raised from the dead, laying in the bed in which she had died. The son of the widow was being carried on his way to be buried when Jesus raised him from the dead. And Lazarus, already dead for several days, wrapped in burial cloths, was raised from the grave, just as the Old Testament reading said. We need to believe, not necessarily to understand, but to believe that we will rise on the last day. That is the promise of God's plan for us. God's plan for us is to live for a while on this earth, then to die and return home to heaven, hopefully, if we've behaved ourselves. In that plan, God gave us each a mortal body which will not live forever. And he also gave us an immortal soul. That spirit, that soul, that part of us that God has created that will live on for all eternity. Where it will live is determined by the way we live. Will we make it to heaven? We are called to do the very best that we can to live in the Spirit, to not get so wrapped up in the desires of this mortal body, desires for fame and power and money and sexual gratification and all of the things that our bodies want that are not good for keeping our soul bright and shining, radiant, and ready to go home to God. Not for just this lifetime, but for all eternity. And like I say, unfortunately, God gave us this crazy thing called free will. And so we have to exercise some control over these mortal bodies that God has given us. Be aware of the love that our God has for us. Be aware of the teachings of our Lord Jesus Christ. Be aware that we are called to be an example for those around us, not pridefully, but humbly, recognizing that God is the most important thing in our life. The saving of our soul is the most important thing for us to be concerned about. And yet it's so easy for us to be subjective and subjected to the desires of the flesh. So realize that all of the things that you get here on earth won't go with you. Well, maybe something will. The love and friendship of friends and family, the love that God gives us to share with one another. He calls us to be aware of each other's needs, to be forgiving, to reach out to others to help them. That's what we're called to do. So as I end most of my homilies, y'all try to stay out of trouble, and I'll try to do the same.